Mr. Henry Kwek.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise in support of the amendment. I'd like to put on record my thanks to the MSF officers who work very hard to not just care for the needy, but also proactively consult VWOs as they change the law. Members from the VWO sector whom I spoke to are supportive of this amendment. It strengthens on how we protect our seniors, especially during a crisis. I especially appreciated the part about protecting whistleblowers, because we do need our community to come in and tell us the states when people most need help. Today I would like to propose on two things: how we can better stay in touch with the vulnerable adults prior to a crisis which requires intervention, and how we can minimize the number of vulnerable adults through lasting power of attorneys or LPAs by getting as many Singaporeans possible to predetermine their caregiving arrangements in the event of a mental incapacitation. Let me touch on the first point. A collaboration between MSF and Silver Generation Office can go far for us to stay in touch with vulnerable adults regularly. I understand that the government has a database called the Developmental Disability Registry, DDR, to track our vulnerable adults and children. This database likely contains a large percentage of them, but it is possible that some of them are not captured in the database. To improve on this matter, during regular SGO outreach to seniors, a small group of vetted and well-trained SGAs, Silver Generation Ambassadors, can be assigned to visit the vulnerable adults already in the registry. These SGAs can refer to social workers if necessary for intervention and to update the registry. In addition, when the other SGAs chance upon any vulnerable adults or children in their outreach session, they can also include that information into the registry. SGO's involvement will go very far to help us know about every vulnerable adult or children in Singapore, and in doing so can potentially forestall some tragedies involving vulnerable adults later on. Next, I'd like to speak about getting Singaporeans to do up their LPAs, lasting power of attorneys. With our aging population, there will be many more adults who, through illnesses or accidents over their life, grow dependent on their families and their friends. If these adults get mentally incapacitated, their caregivers will have difficulties mobilizing enough resources for them. Without a strong support network, some of these mentally incapacitated Singaporeans could become vulnerable adults. We should tackle the problem upstream by encouraging all Singaporeans to create lasting power of attorneys, which identifies and authorizes a donee to act on his behalf, including on financial matters, when he or she is mentally incapacitated. Should no LPA exist after the mental incapacity sets in, there are still options to deal with it, but it gets complicated. Family members and friends can apply to be court-appointed deputies, which is time-consuming and costly. MSF's new Community Kinship Service pilot can get social workers to be court-appointed deputies and therefore take charge. But most of us here in this chamber will agree that MSF's limited resources should only be focused on the most pressing of cases. Therefore, to minimize the number of vulnerable adults ahead of the coming silver tsunami, LPs play a major role. I've assembled a team of lawyers and community leaders to think about this issue. We believe that a major LPA adoption drive is necessary, and we'd like to propose 3 steps. 1. Integrate the LPA into relevant government processes. This will give many Singaporeans the chance to think through this issue, to make a decision, and drop the LPAs. For example, ICA can insert the LPA process automatically within the 55-year-old IC registration process, as well as the passport renewal process for Singaporeans over 45 years old. HDB can insert the LPA process within all deed transfers and name insertions for people above 55. MOH can get hospitals to advise moderate to high risk and senior patients to get LPAs and offer that process in major hospitals. 2, we can minimize the cost of LPAs. The current cost is not costly, but to get mass adoption of LPAs by seniors and retirees, we can try to bring the cost down even more. MSF can extend the waiver of LPA application costs. At pre-selected government offices issuing large number of LPA certifications, we can include an on-site team of certifiers, lawyers, doctors, psychiatrists, and the benefit of this is that we can then offer out bulk contracts for these certification services to further reduce the cost from lawyers, doctors, and psychiatrists. Another option is for us to train a subset of civil servants who know about these issues to act as certifiers at key locations. Our third point is that we need to communicate extensively. We can explain about LPAs through videos in different languages. These videos can be made and screened on television, within cinemas, and online. SGO can also explain the importance of LPAs to seniors, and we can also communicate the importance through various community health screenings. I am sure a big push will increase the LPA numbers, and we must monitor the option very closely. However, if the situation does not improve within a few years, I hope we can consider even more decisive steps. One is to make LPA mandatory. The other is to revise our Mental Capacity Act to include a default LPA. By default LPA, it means having the law to automatically determine the person to take charge in the absence of an LPA made voluntarily. Talking to my team of lawyers and community leaders, the tricky part of the default LPA option is how the law should determine the donors. The most obvious way the law can determine the donee is to use the succession rules from the Inter-Succession Act. But even if we go down that path, we need to consider whether the default donee should be an individual or a group of natural heirs with collective responsibilities. And if there is collective responsibilities, how should the responsibilities be divided out, and how do you reconcile the difference in views and motivations around the natural heirs in the process? So this is quite tricky. If we do go down the path of default LPA, it would be also good for us to clarify the power of donees with regards to utilizing the assets of the donors. This could include clear guidelines on what constitutes as reasonable for medical and long-term care of donors, caregiver of donors' direct dependents. Caregiving of donors' direct dependents. I understand that Minister Desmond Lee has set up the RERF committee recently to review family law issues. Perhaps the committee can take the lead to explore the default LPA issues very carefully in consultation of the lawyers, the legal community, and the people sector, so we can have at least one additional option to minimize the number of vulnerable adults. But of course, the first logical thing, no regrets move we should do, is to push for the mass adoption of voluntary LPA. To conclude, I warmly welcome and support the amendments. With stronger laws in place, I hope we can improve how we care for our vulnerable seniors. Moving forward, I also hope we can focus on the urgent task of minimizing the number of vulnerable seniors, and one good way is to get all Singaporeans to write up their LPAs. Thank you.